My late mother, Cyril, her English name was Sylvia Kleiman. She was the youngest child of also very religious parents. And so they lived in a village, I think it was in the part of Poland that had the large Ukrainian population. It was probably a Ukrainian village. There were only two Jewish families. My maternal family, the Kleimans at one end, and another Jewish family at the other. My maternal grandfather died when my mother, she was the youngest child. She was only a year and a half old, so she had no visual memory of her father, only stories. He died of tuberculosis. He was about 39 or 40 years old, and he left my grandmother with 5 living children in very dire straits. And she had to divide up the babies, the younger, with family, and she took the older children to Warsaw and found employment as a seamstress, and then managed to reunite her family, and they lived in dire poverty in one room, in an attic and a garret, in the heart of Jewish proletarian Warsaw. My mother had to quit school. She went to work when she was 8 years old. My mother had her oldest sister who immigrated to the United States, to New York City. She was a revolutionary, she was a Bundist, she belonged to the Bund in Warsaw. My aunt Esther Genius, she left as a very young woman, 19, something like that, just before the outbreak of the First World War. And the thought was that she would find work and send money to bring her mother and her younger siblings. But of course the First World War broke out, and she was separated from her family for 7 years, which were 7 years of misery and horror for my mother and her siblings and my grandmother, war and starvation and pogroms, revolution and counter-revolution, and so on. But finally, very lucky, in 1921, she sent enough money to bring her mother, my grandmother, the only grandparent I ever knew, although I was only 3 when she died, and 2 of the siblings, because one aunt had died of the Spanish influenza when they were preparing to leave. So this was the last year of what is historically inaccurately called free and unrestricted immigration. That was, it was only for people of the so-called white race and Europeans and so on. There were plenty of restrictions, and even for Europeans, it was the year that the United States adopted the immigration quotas based on racist thinking. So my mother was very, very lucky. I'm here because of this, that my grandmother and 2 of her daughters immigrated through Ellis Island to New York in the fall of 1921.